when Allison asked me to do this, it's because she had me for a music history class some time ago, before she went to Oxford. And I was a little hesitant because, you know, especially when I found out who the other speakers were, because what they teach is extremely, they really lend itself, their subjects really lend itself to lecture about something that's really deep and really intellectual, and I'm not downplaying what I do in the performing arts, but it is an applied art, and I am a music professor, and aside from, I don't want to just talk about music history or talk about music theory, I mean, how can I get that to apply to you, but I decided to go with a different approach, okay? So, you know, I have spoken about music history, as I said. I've given recitals, played the piano, I'm a pianist. I've done lecture recitals, I've done workshops for piano teachers. I just recently did a presentation at Ravenel Elementary for Artists on the Green. So that kind of venue I'm pretty comfortable in. I feel fairly confident, I will tell you that for now. So I'm giving my disclaimer because I think in this talk, I decided to make it more on the personal side. So this is the first time I'm going to go that route. And it's not completely weird for me because when I do my music history lectures, I don't know if Allison will remember any of this, I tended to interject something funny or interject something personally to enhance what we're doing so that it's not so boring to listen about Bach or Beethoven or whatnot or Ravel. So I usually try to make it interesting. So I guess I'm going to focus more on that side, and it's going to be less academic, and I hope that's okay. So that's my disclaimer. And you know, I was just told by a student today that you never start a public speech by saying you're unqualified, and I'm not really doing that, but I am telling you that this is the first time I've done a talk in this kind of venue, in this kind of in the TED Talks style, which I'm still not quite sure what it is. I know it's supposed to be inspiring and get you to think more about what you're doing. So I am out of my comfort zone, and I feel like I'm practicing when I'm preaching because I'm going to try to persuade you to strive even more. I'm sure some of you are already getting out of your comfort zone, but I'm going to try to encourage you to do that even more today. So I am practicing when I'm preaching. And another thing is that I decided to take the approach of trying to imagine what you're going through, which is really hard for me because I'm so much older than you right now, and I'm from a different era. You probably can't even imagine I'm from the era of landlines and answering machines, where people actually listened to their voicemail, and that was the main way to communicate, which that was the best way to snag a date, is just never being home. You know, that was a good way to play hard to get. You know, these games that people play back then, I just have no idea how you kids navigate your social lives right now. It's just so complicated, and with Facebook and everything. So I come from a different era, so I'm trying to imagine what you're going through, and I want to make sure you understand that I'm not trying to get you to live your life like mine or tell you what to do with your lives. I'm a firm believer that everyone should do what he or she feels is best for him or her. And you know, that's the last thing I want to do, is to preach or to impose my beliefs or impose what I do onto you. And whatever you decide to do with your lives, or whatever goals you decide to pursue, or whatever direction you decide to take, it's going to be the right way. I mean, I'm telling you right now, whatever you're doing, it's going to be the right way. There's no wrong way. I have had a couple of regrets, and you're always going to doubt what you did in the past, but no matter what road you choose, in the big picture, it's going to be the correct one. And I guess I'm just kind of giving you some vindication, hopefully some validation of any decision you've made for yourself, okay? And I guess some value of what you're doing, okay? So I hope that's okay that I'm going that approach, all right? So, and feel free to interject. And I just want to know, how many seniors or upperclassmen do we have here? Yes, junior seniors, okay. And the rest of you, you're underclassmen? Okay, good. Excuse me? Grad student, cool, okay. And then we have freshmen. How many freshmen? And how many sophomores? Okay. So you're all at a different stage in your life, because you know, it's really funny to see the underclassmen, not funny, haha, but fun to see them, because they're very, you know, oh wow, this is so great, and this is Clemson and everything. And then you see the upperclassmen, they're pretty cynical, you know, it's just like, so it's fun to see them kind of. So I hope this will apply to everyone, and I hope you can make it apply. So I'm gonna try this approach and see what happens, okay? I also wanted to ask, just out of curiosity, who here has changed majors or is going to change majors? Anybody? Okay. So most of you are pretty much sticking with what, and the underclassmen, you feel pretty happy with your majors at this point. You feel like it's the right, that's awesome. Okay, that's awesome. And hopefully this will apply too, so I was curious about that. And who's going to graduate soon from grad school or undergrad? Anybody soon? Like this coming May or next May? In the near future? Okay, good. I'm just curious to see what kind of makeup we have here. And is anyone, it's probably too early for the underclassmen, but I can still address that. Anyone planning to take a break from school?
You mean like an actual semester break, or you just have to take a break?
Any kind of break. Okay, all right. And was the break met with resistance from other people at all? And they're just like, that's great. Okay, good, good, that's good. I just think nowadays, parents are just generally more supportive about everything than from my time, and I can talk a little bit about that. So I'm just curious. Okay, so I went with the 3 Ps, and it's not, I don't think it's going to be what you think it is. Of course, I don't know what you think. The 3 Ps had some effect on me, and it's not the answers. Oh, these are the 3 Ps, and this is what you should live your life. No, it's not going to be anything like that, okay? This is a result of when I visited Taiwan. I am a first-generation American, and I am completely Americanized, okay? So there's like, you know, that's what happens to a lot of immigrant children. They just go one direction, you know? And I don't speak Chinese, and I'm ashamed of that, but that's okay. I'll deal with it. But anyway, I'm a first generation, and when I was, I think, my first year graduate school, I went to Taiwan with my parents. And when we were over there, my mom, on the way, was telling me about all the, and it's much different now, let me say, about all these women in Taiwan who look for a Chinese American, like somebody who was from China and moved to the United States. And at that time, it was very desirable to live in the United States, like more so than now. Nowadays, a lot of people move to China. But at that time, people from Taiwan and China really wanted to come over here, okay? And the way to get here for a lot of women was to marry somebody to get over here, okay? And I was a little, you know, shocked by that. You know, I was, you know, I just thought that was kind of dishonest, and, you know, you're using somebody to get somewhere, and I just didn't think that was very ethical. And I'm not trying to be judgmental of women in Taiwan, but I just thought, wow, some of these women really do that. I mean, you know, I was just very, and you know, you always hear about people marrying for money, but that I just found just very surprising. And my mom says, oh yes, a lot of these women, you know, they're looking for the 3 Ps. And I went, the 3 Ps? What are the 3 Ps, you know? And anyway, they have, they're looking for property. They want to find a man who has property, so obviously he has to own a house. So I was like, wow, no, that's, and they're looking for a PhD, because most Taiwanese and Chinese women want a very well-educated man. Okay? And they're also looking for permanent residence. Okay, so a citizen or permanent residence, and those were their criteria. And if you had those, if you were a Chinese American man in Taiwan or China, you will be married. No matter how you look, okay? And it was interesting because there was this family friend, his name was Shuri Shrong, and when I was a kid I called him Tree Shrunk because I couldn't pronounce his name right. And he was a real geeky guy, you know, I just found him extremely, very annoying all the time, you know, he's just very nerdy, and he had that greasy hair and the big hormone glasses. And one time he went to Taiwan and he came home with a gorgeous, gorgeous wife. I mean, gorgeous. I just couldn't believe it. And it's because he had the 3 Ps. Okay, so I was just really shocked by that because, you know, I still believe this. I believe you should find your soulmate. And, you know, I have these very romanticized, you know, notions that everyone, I guess, should have, but not unrealistic about it. And I just thought that was very, very strange, okay? So this really got me thinking, okay, and led me to other things that I'm going to try to lead into, okay? And then go to this other thing, wait, before I do this. Okay, I wanted to bring up this French professor. He's a saxophone professor. And, you know, we talked about the 3 Ps, which is like a checkbox. Okay, you have this check, 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 let's get married. Okay. And then I was talking to Claude DeLong, who's this saxophone professor. My husband is a saxophonist at the Paris Conservatory. And he was giving some classes at the University of Georgia. That's where I went for one of my grad schools. And he's an amazing person because sometimes you're in awe of these people and you think, oh, they're probably, you know, and he's French. He's probably going to be a real snob and a real jerk, you know, because, you know, you just have these preconceived notions. And he turned out to be a very warm, very funny, very human person. You could talk to him very normally. He wasn't pretentious. He wasn't bizarre or weird. He was just a regular guy, which I was really surprised. And I guess that's my own fault. I shouldn't be prejudging people like that. But, you know, we all do that, I guess, without meaning to. So he was kind of funny because he really enjoyed working with the American students. And he had very good English, so there was no communication problem. But he always got very frustrated with some of the American students. And he, you know, confessed that to me. I was accompanying him. I was playing piano for him for recital. And he said, I just can't stand it when these American students, they're so obsessed with requirements. I'm like, well, they have a lot of them, unfortunately. He said, but that's all they think about. They don't think about anything else. And I was talking to this one student who was playing the Glazunov saxophone concerto, and I asked him, why are you playing this piece? And he said, well, because my teacher required me to do so. And that got him, set him off. And this was a public lesson, set him off on this rampage of, you know, that's the stupidest reason to play this wonderful piece and blah, blah, blah. It got him off. And I think the kid was only a freshman, and I think he was quite terrified. And anyway, and it was interesting because I heard the other side, you know, oh, Claude DeLong really came down on this kid. I mean, this poor little freshman. I mean, you know, he just was so devastated. So I just heard that story, and then I hear Claude DeLong's version, and he was just going on and on about requirement, and just, you know, checking your boxes, making sure you fulfill requirements. And he said, and this is starting to happen in France as well, okay? And he was very dismayed by that. So that, you know, the 3 Ps, this conversation kind of got me thinking, you know, and applied to this. And, you know, our present culture doesn't help much because I think with all of you, there's so many requirements to get in college, and I'm just not looking forward to it with my children. I hear some of these high school parents of high school children talk, and it's very, very terrifying to me. And I hear, you know, AP, and I AP'd out of this, and I get out of this. And I think also with the internet, I mean, when you think of things like Match.com and eHarmony, literally you are checking boxes to find your ideal mate. And I just find that very horrifying in some ways. And I understand why people do that. Fortunately, I met my husband pre all this, and I have no idea if I would do this now if I were single, or if I were in a situation where I was single. I have no idea. And I have, you know, there are at least 2 people in my department who found their husband, both found their wives through one Match.com, the other one was eHarmony, and they seem to be doing great now. So, and I know it's fine, but when you come in single, it's just really, really difficult. You know, it's very difficult. So I understand why, but you know, our culture and the way we do everything doesn't really help. Okay, so I'm just mentioning that. Okay, so I think we all do the checkbox, and I do it too. And I didn't mean to, and I'll get back into this in a little bit, but I just hope that you can, when you have to do it to an extent. I totally understand that. I mean, like my syllabus. It's like if you finish these assignments, check, 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 you'll be done, okay? If you do this, if you fulfill these, you know, your DPR report, if you do everything on there, you're going to be done. You're going to be able to graduate. Of course, you have to do that. But you have to be careful that it doesn't limit you in any way. And you have to think about, I mean, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but I encounter a lot of people who say, well, I plan to be married by this time, and by this year I'm going to be doing this, and by then I'm going to have my first child at 27, and actually my nephew does this, okay? And my niece are doing it. So this is where I hear this, and I don't want to say anything to them and say, look, really, you can't plan your life like that, because you're just going to set yourself up for failure, okay? You're going to feel like a failure if you don't achieve these boxes at the time that you say you will. So I'm just mentioning that at the risk of rambling around. But but back to that, and if I think of it, I may elaborate on it later. If I followed this checkbox mentality regarding choosing my husband, I would have not. Well, actually, I didn't want to choose my husband at first because he didn't fit into my criteria. And I'm not saying that to be shallow, but well, yeah, I guess I was pretty shallow because he's a saxophonist, and I'm a pianist. And I had this notion that I would marry a string player, okay? Because there's so much wonderful, wonderful repertoire for piano and violin and piano and cello, okay? That's like some of the best repertoire in the world, okay? So I thought, saxophone, what kind of repertoire is there for saxophone, And plus, saxophone, that's band. Band is a full lot of work, I want to be with an orchestra guy, because I'm a snob. I admit it, I'm a snob about music. And it was really hard for me to reconcile that because I really had it in my head that I can't be with a saxophonist. So it took a couple months for me to accept it. And I'm ashamed of it now. And at the time I knew, and when it was happening, I knew I was being shallow. I knew I was being ridiculous. But you get set in a certain way. I have a lot of piano students right now. The Department of Performing Arts has a piano major. It's a BA. It's not like a BM in piano performance. We don't have a performance degree, but it's more of a BA. And we're still waiting to catch on. I could use more majors. I love having majors. So most of my students are not music majors. They just have to be really involved with performing arts. And I would say that definitely they're not following the checkbox. But it's fun to talk to them because I see, oh yeah, I'm doing this, I'm making sure I do this so that I get my internship there, and one of my students who is like checkbox king, he has done everything he has set out to do. He's fulfilled every single goal. But he's taking piano lessons, and he takes, even though he's in some kind of, he's in bioengineering, he still tries to take English courses, which I think is pretty cool, because he told me it's not required anymore. So I thought that was really cool. So he's kind of balanced that whole checkbox thing in where he's taking piano, he's playing Chopin and Bach right now. We're learning some great literature and taking some tough English courses. But he did all the right things to make sure he can get into med school. He's very, very focused and very on track. So I want to mention that I have piano students that are not necessarily really, really rigid in their way, but I see these other things. And the other thing that's interesting is that I have a lot of seniors right now, and I'm seeing what they're going through, and it's just been kind of fascinating. So this is what brought me to this one, indecision. Okay, and this is like a way of getting away from the checkbox thing, and I think that indecision is not a bad thing. Okay, and I know that it's hard to be indecisive because I think it's viewed as being a negative thing most of the time by everyone, like your parents. And what are you going to get together? What are you going to do? But I don't know. I mean, like I said, my generation, it was much more, you're out of the house, man. You're on your own. I think parents are a little more, they'll let you stay, with them a little longer. But anyway, I want to get to indecision a little bit. And I'm not saying that you should live your life. Please don't live your life like mine. But I'm just saying that that's like the story of my own life is indecision, and I'm just telling you this because I think, not that I had this great, phenomenal life now, but I think everything worked out for me for the best, okay? It worked out just fine. I would love to have more money. I would like other things, but in general, I think I'm doing okay, And I put this just today, and which is kind of funny because Barbara Ramirez said to me, she wanted to make sure this presentation would go well today. And she said, oh, could you email your presentation to me so I can download it onto the computer? And I was like, no, I have to look at it some more. And I was too indecisive to do it. And I never did it because I couldn't decide to do it. So I'm just saying, even today, I was practicing my indecision. And I'll just tell you what I did. It's kind of funny because Lee is my maiden name. My dad is I don't know if you've heard about the Tiger Mom, Tiger Dad, there's Wolf Dad and Tiger Mom. I kind of grew up in that kind of household. All I did were not as bad as some of the stuff that the Amy Chua did. I'm just saying how I'm doing. But I would say that I think because my dad was one extreme and a very decisive person, and never ever doubted anything he did. I mean, I can't imagine being that way. It's just, I don't think he ever questions or second guesses himself, ever. I don't, and even if he did, he would never admit it in a million years. You know, I'm always second guessing myself. So I will tell you that Bill, my oldest brother, changed his major 3 times while he was at Purdue, and he's now a computer, he works for SAP. And then my brother Ken, he graduated from Duke, and when my dad went to see him graduate, he said, well, what are you going to do? And he said, well, I don't know. And my dad was furious. And I guess he lectured him at his graduation dinner when he took him out, and my brother to this day is very mad. Then he thought, well, I'll just take the MCATs, see what happens. And now he's a doctor. So he managed to get into med school, and it all worked out. So I come from a history of indecisive people, and I will tell you that the music career, yeah, that I already did the Tiger. I think what happened, in spite of the fact that my dad is extremely decisive and very rigid in his way, for being, you know, being from China and having to do what he had to do to survive here and to succeed here, I would say he's a person who's achieved the American dream, an immigrant who's achieved the American dream, naturalized citizen, everything. He basically, that's the idea that he imposed on me. Just find a job you love and you'll never have to work in a day of your life. And to tell you the truth, he did not say that to me. That was just the idea. I got that quote from, do you ever, any of you watch Sundance, the Mortified Sessions? Has anyone heard of that?
Is that like the Sundance Film Festival?
Yeah, they have this show called the Mortified Sessions where they have a celebrity on there and they go through their childhood and talk about stuff. It's a little hard to watch sometimes because it's painful. But once in a while I'll catch it because ever since I had children I don't sleep well. And I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll just turn on the TV, which is what you're not supposed to do, and I'll watch this Mortified Session. Well, anyway, they had Ed Burns. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a director, mostly independent film, and he said that. He said that his father told him that. And, you know, that's pretty much what my dad said. So I think, and my dad was very passionate about what he did. He was a chemist, and he loved it. And I think he really made that impression on us, and I think that's why the 3 of us were so indecisive, because we were so terrified of picking the wrong field, and we were so afraid of not liking what we did, and the 3 of us are just that way. I don't know why we turned out that way, but that's what happened, okay? And I was also, I mean, and I don't know if you know much about the classical music world, but there are lots and lots and lots of Asians in classical music right now. I don't know if you've noticed that. I mean, I don't know if you grew up with any. I don't know if any took piano lessons or violin lessons. I mean, they tend to, I can say this because I'm Asian, they tend to be in strings and piano, okay? You very rarely do you see a Chinese symphonist. I mean, it just doesn't, when I see one, I'm shocked, you know. The only time I've seen, like, Chinese trumpet players was in Taiwan. You know, I mean, I've never seen them in the States, okay? They always play strings or piano. I don't know why, but they do. Once in a while, clarinet, okay? And I think I met one Chinese oboe player, okay? But that's about it, all right? So, but really, and I don't know if you've seen this and if you know any Asian Americans, but they tend to do well in school. And they tend to play string instruments, and they tend to play them extremely well. And I judge a lot. I judge a lot of pre-college kids. And of course, the top prizes always go to the Chinese kids of immigrants, okay, of the immigrant parents, all right? And so there was this belief that, okay, you've got to be #1 and win all the competitions, but don't you dare do that as your career, okay? But we want you to be the best at it, okay? So that was kind of the message that was on all of us when I was growing up with all my Chinese American friends. We all tried to excel at our instruments, and I had these friends who were just phenomenal violinists. They could have easily done it as a major, easily, you know, but they all became doctors and engineers and, you know, the typical Chinese fields. And I was one of the few that decided to do it as a career, which was, at that time, a no-no, okay? Now you see a lot more of it. But at the time, billions of years ago, in our little Chinese American community, it was, I decided to pursue music, and another guy who was older than me, Leslie Tong, I put that on there to remind myself, we were the only ones, okay? And my dad was actually okay with it. And, you know, he's a bit sexist, and I think the reason he was okay with it is because I was a girl, You know, if I'd been a man, I think he would have been a little more like, no, you can't do that. But he probably thought, okay, well, she can probably do it. But on the other hand, he was always very supportive about it. He was like, if you want to do it, if you can do whatever you want, and as long as you work hard, you'll succeed. I mean, he was really good. It was my mom who was kind of a wreck about it, who was just very unhappy about it. And my brothers and all of my Chinese American friends and anybody Chinese would say, "You're going to music? You shouldn't do that. You're not going to be able to live." So I got a lot of negative feedback from pretty much everyone except my dad, you know, which was kind of cool. Now Leslie, I was actually lucky. Okay, I came out pretty good. Okay, because Leslie and he's a music professor, a piano professor at Kalamazoo in Michigan. He plays historical instruments, historical pianos. He got into Harvard Law School. Okay, and I can say this, but in the Chinese culture, you know, Ivy is like ideal. I mean, prestigious schools are like every Chinese parent's dream, you know, to get in a really, really great school. And, you know, the fact that he got into Harvard, it just like he fulfilled their dreams, and they had 4 other kids. The other kids were doctors. One was a vet. The other are medical doctors, okay? So they were just so proud of him, but he decided to reject that law degree and become a pianist. And that was devastating. I mean, his mother had a nervous breakdown and had to be institutionalized. I mean, that's how hard she took it, you know. So I was actually pretty lucky. I didn't have that kind of impact on anyone, and I can't imagine having that on me, causing, you know, I mean, really, she's the one who caused it for herself, technically, but you would still feel pretty bad about that, you know. And she has accepted it. She's gotten through it, and actually she's no longer alive now, but I mean, this was just recent. She did come to terms with it, and you know, she was okay, and she was happy for him. Eventually, he had 3 kids. He's fine. He's happy. He married another pianist, so he's living the life he wants. But it was very hard. Okay, so I'm just saying that, you know, you do have to make these tough decisions, but in the end, you gotta, you know, and you probably already know this, but I guess this is personal because I'm coming across a student of mine, a bioengineer, another one, who really wants to pursue music, and I don't know what to tell him. And he said his mother's just going to be heartbroken because he's really smart. He's like, you know, you're all honors kids, and he's an honors kid too. He's very bright, and I can understand that because if I had a really, really bright kid, I'd be like, oh, doctor, oh, yeah, you know, make a lot of money, have a good life, never have to worry. So, you know, I can understand that. So I'm just trying to stay out of it as best as I can because I don't want his mom to get mad at me. But anyway, it's tough. It's tough to make. Sometimes you're indecisive because you're worried about others, and other times you're indecisive because you don't know what you're going to do. And I think for me, I was indecisive because of everything. Everyone was telling me it was a bad idea. Everything, you know. And also, you know, choosing the career was hard, and also deciding where to go to school because I got accepted to Oberlin, which is a really good conservatory, and I only applied to 2 schools. And I decided to go to University of Illinois because there was a piano teacher I wanted to study with there. And I thought, well, what if I decide not to go into music? Because, you know, the outside influences were hitting me. And, you know, everybody's saying, well, what if you don't want to be in music? And I'm like, okay. So then I decided to go to University of Illinois because of that. And sometimes I look back on it and I wonder, you know, I wonder if I would have had more opportunities had I gone to Oberlin. But on the other hand, I still have my friends from that time. My teacher was amazing. I had a phenomenal piano professor who was just great, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. So, you know, you think about these things. So, anyway, and also with the indecision, and this is a personal thing, I couldn't decide whether to get married. I was 30 by the time I got married, which is old for South Carolina, I think. I think it's old for anybody. It's old to get married. And it was hard on my parents as well. That's the thing about immigrant parents. They aren't very polite. Like my husband's parents, they're like, okay, well, that's really what you want to do. That's okay. No, mine will tell me, what are you? You're not married yet? What am I going to get? A nice son-in-law? Whatever. You know, they're very blunt. You know. So I got that for several years, and anyway, but I had a hard time deciding that because I didn't want to make it long. But it all worked out. I'm just saying, indecision is not a bad thing, okay? And it works. It has worked for me, okay? And then I became older. And then it started, you know, the proverbial biological clock, because I was trying to get tenure, and I was afraid to have children because I thought, man, if you have kids, it's so hard to get tenure. I mean, what if the kids get sick? Well, I have to, you know, I have to cancel class. Everyone's going to be upset with me. And it doesn't help that, you know, one of the only tenured women in our department, she came here, you know, 30 years ago, and they didn't even have maternity leave, which is like illegal, okay? And when I saw how much she suffered, and I was afraid that and she's never missed a day of work, ever, okay? Never, 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 all right? She's like a workaholic, very dutiful, very, you know. So I thought, well, she's on my tenure committee. If she sees me and I have kids and I cancel class, you know, she might look down on that. I mean, I really was afraid of that. So I put it off, and then I was getting really old, and so I thought, well, I better, because then I won't have any. But I did leave it up to fate. You know, I have nothing against in vitro, and I think it's great when couples do that, but I wasn't going to do it. You know, I'm like, I'm not going to go that far because it's just too stressful, and I hate stress. So if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So Lauren came about, and then I didn't know, well, should we have one or two? Again, indecision. So, you know, you're probably going to think I can't decide anything, but, you know, it really isn't true. I mean, you know, I knew to come here, and I can get things done, believe it or not, and I'm pretty organized in my classes, but some things like big, giant decisions, I really have issues with them, okay? But anyway, I also want to just plant in your head, and again, I'm going through this with some of my students, so that's why it's in my head. I've got several seniors, I've got several of them, you know, and even younger ones that are already, you know, I don't know if I'm going to be in med school. I don't know if that's what I want to do, and I need some time off. And I think there's nothing wrong with taking a break from your long-term goals and just pursuing a short-term one. And I just talked to one former piano student. She's very focused. She's an amazing person, and she spent a semester in France because she was supposed to. She's a French major. And she's going to do Teach for America, and I think that's a great idea. I think it's great, or take some time off to go abroad, or get a Fulbright, or whatever. I really think that's a good idea to do if you're burnt out or if you're wrecked with indecision, you know. And I'm just telling you, it all works in the end. It really does. I can't tell you how every decision you make is always going to be the right one. Really, it is. I promise you, because coming from a very indecisive person who has always afraid of making the wrong decision, I don't think I've made any wrong decisions. A couple, but not, you know, not really. And I will say that the study abroad thing is one of my big regrets. Not that I did it, because I didn't do it, okay? It just never occurred to me. I guess no one ever thought of it to tell me to do it, and when I was in an undergrad, I just never thought about it, so I never did it. And now I look back and I'm like, wow, why didn't I do that? That would have been such a great, because, you know, the school would do all the work for you, and you would be going with students your age, you would immediately meet people. You know, I did go to Europe after I graduated with my parents, and that was fun in its way, but I think it would have been much more fun to go without my parents and hang out with peers, you know. So I think, you know, if any of you going through any kind of crossroads, I mean, you all seem pretty decisive people, more than I was. I really highly recommend doing something like that, because in one way, you know, in between schools, I just think that if you can go abroad and immerse yourself in a culture, it's one of the most educational experiences you can ever have. And I always tell every class of mine that. I mean, even my regular music history, my regular music preach, I say that constantly. And that's one thing I admit I'm pushing on you a little bit. Of course, if you don't do it, that's okay. You know, you have to do what you want to do. It really puts you out of your comfort zone, and it's so great to be out of your comfort zone, because, you know, it's such a cynical time right now. We're always so afraid to trust people, and we're always hearing bad news. And I found that you go abroad, you really depend on others, and you really depend on the kindness of others. And pretty much they all come, I mean, you hear about that Amanda Knox thing. I mean, that's like a, you know, it's horrible the way that happened. But that's very, 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 very rare. And it's a pretty amazing experience. So I encourage you to try to do it, or take a trip, or find a way to have some kind of international experience. And if you're in an indecisive period, like I always am, or, you know, anyway, some opportunity comes up, grab it. And because you're young, and this is the time to do it. And it can change your life in a lot of ways. I mean, I don't know how much it changed my life, because when I had a Fulbright, 2008, And I doubt these two remember anything, although it was great for them. But like people like my brother, my oldest brother, who, oh, here, I'll go, yeah, I'll go to him next, and I just put that to remind myself. We went to China when I was in high school, and he was a kind of a hippie type guy, and fairly, I don't know, like, oh, I'm going to marry an American woman, I don't want to marry a Chinese woman, you know, blah, 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 because he just didn't want to do that just to rebel against my parents. You know, basically, back then I think we were more rebellious. You know, I think now we're all fairly respectful of the parents. It wasn't the case in my day and age. So, you know, he was kind of drifting a little bit. He was drifting a bit. And this, that Chinese experience changed him. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it like, we still talk about it to this day. And he was so moved by our cousins because a lot of our cousins were in the Cultural Revolution. They suffered immensely during the Cultural Revolution. Many of them were put in camps, in labor camps. And they were all around his age, and he befriended them. And the thing about him is he can speak Chinese because he was born in Taiwan. So he was just overwhelmed by this experience of talking to them and learning about this. And it really made him proud of who he was. So he did marry a Chinese person, someone from China who moved to Taiwan, you know, kind of like my brother. He's Chinese, but he was born in Taiwan. So now, and he's still with her. And actually, it was a relief because he took the pressure off of me. I didn't have to marry a Chinese person. And my other brother, we both did not marry Chinese people. So that was great. So that really changed his life, and I think in a positive way. And I also want to mention that when we were living in Taiwan, I don't know if it changed my life, but it really made me aware, and I'm not practicing it right now, I'm using a paper cup. You know, it's a tiny country, and they were worried about landfills there because there just isn't enough land. And I just couldn't believe how vigilant everyone was about recycling, about carrying a cup around all the time. You would not leave your apartment or your house without a bag. You know, if you want to use the bag from the store, it costs like 5 cents. You know, at 5 cents or 2 cents, whatever. It's very cheap. And once in a while, you wanted that extra bag to put trash in. But I just got in the habit of always carrying in a bag because everybody else did, and you just didn't want to feel like a wasteful person. And just what I just love the whole green aspect, and it's not because, you know, I'm not trying to push that on you, but I just thought that was kind of cool that everybody was in on this because they have this little country and they were really worried about it. And also the diet. Now, I'm sorry to say that I have gone back to cheese pizza and, you know, eating really bad things. But my husband is totally, ever since coming back from Taiwan, he rarely eats cheese anymore. Well, I think he's anorexically thin personally, but he's really been paying much more attention to his diet and drinking more tea. So it's affected him still, and I think for the better because, you know, he and I are middle-aged and we're at a time where you could get a heart attack or diabetes, or we're very afraid of. Even if you're fit, you can still get that. So I'm just putting these little things out there. So anyway, I put these little pics. I guess I'm at the end. I hope I didn't go over time. And that was a Fulbright meeting. So that's me and my husband. I'm just putting that there. These are some students. I was teaching at Chinese Culture University and in Taipei. So you know they're fun kids, and that's a whole nother story. The students, oh my gosh, so different from the Americans. If we could take the best of their culture and the best from ours and combine them, it would be great. Because you know. They're known for being very respectful and obedient, but sometimes that's not good either. You know, you got to question authority sometimes. That's my husband. He was conducting a band, so I just put that there at Taipei National University of Arts. And this was an incredible museum. I mean, thousands and thousands, like stuff from BC was in this museum. It was unbelievable. So it was a lot of stuff from China that ended up in Taiwan. So it just, they had brought a lot, when people escaped China because of the communism, some of the artifacts got over here, so they got a lot of stuff. This was a little beach area or ocean area in Taipei, and I think people don't realize how pretty Taipei really is. Everyone goes to China. I think this is kind of like an undiscovered gem, and they want to keep it that way because they don't want a bunch of tourists to come. And Lauren did a classroom. She was in a Chinese classroom. So anyway, I took a picture of that. So she did pretty well. I don't know, do you remember anything, hon? You do? They fussed over her. They love kids.
That was Luke at his Christmas program. Was that a Teletubby? I don't know. What were you?
I don't know.
So I have no idea. So that was their first ride in the subway. So I'm not. I don't look at me, but look at them. They were having fun. Do you remember that? I don't know if you remember any of this. This the tea house. You probably don't. You was only 3 at the time. So I have to put food up. This was this dumpling place that was around the corner, and I went there every day. I got something. It was so cheap. It was almost cheaper to eat out than it was to buy groceries. And we just got their dumplings, and that's hot and sour soup. So we did that a lot. Hot pot. I don't know if you know that's Chinese fondue. You have hot soup, and you dip raw vegetables and raw meat in there, and cook it and eat it. And it was all you can eat. And you just grab anything you wanted and throw it in your pot on the table, and it was awesome. I mean, it's one of my favorite things. They also have other food. That was some sashimi. You know, they also have Japanese food. I'd say the cuisine there was incredible. They had everything. Thai food was really good. Oh, and we also had made a trip to China, a side trip to China. So that was the Great Wall. And of course, there was another side trip. I had to put that because it's so cute. Yes, the pianist. So anyway, I had